From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Tuesday, July the 16th, 2024. 3 Israelis were lightly hurt this morning in a shooting attack near the town of Beit Lead in Samaria, the West Bank. Magen David Adom paramedics said 3 males aged 32, 16, and 15 respectively were treated for light injuries at the scene from shattered glass when their vehicle came under fire. The IDF said its forces continue the hunt for the terrorists who carried out the shooting. Israeli troops continue fighting terror group Hamas in Gaza and said today that Israeli fighter jets carried out an airstrike on terrorists operating at a school belonging to the UN relief agency UNRWA, saying based on precise intelligence, the IDF struck terrorists who operated in an UNRWA school in the area of Nuseirat. The terrorists planned and directed numerous attacks against IDF troops in Gaza from the building. The IDF saying prior to the strike, numerous steps were taken in order to mitigate the risk of harming civilians. Though the IDF later said we are looking into the reports, stating that several civilians were injured as a result of the strike. The IDF also targeted Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon, hitting 2 terrorists, it said, after they were spotted fleeing from the area where the launches were made last night to Kiryat Shmona, referring there to barrages of rockets that were fired at the northern Israeli city, which continued today, with at least 20 rockets fired at Kiryat Shmona this evening. Times of Israel saying a number of rockets were intercepted by the Iron Dome, but some did make impact, causing damage to buildings. No injuries were reported. More now on the sit-down yesterday of Israeli National Security Advisor Tzachi Hanegbi, Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer, and U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken for a meeting of the U.S.-Israel Strategic Consultative Group. The White House readout said the meeting centered on countering Iran's threats to Israel and the broader region. Mr. Sullivan affirmed President Biden's ironclad commitment to Israel's security, including in the face of ongoing and reckless attacks against Israel by Lebanese Hezbollah. Sullivan also emphasized that Israel has every right to defend itself against these attacks, also discussing mutual coordination on a series of measures to ensure that Iran can never acquire a nuclear weapon. The 4 also discussed developments in Gaza and progress towards a ceasefire and hostage release deal, saying the Israeli side affirmed its full support for the deal as outlined by President Biden and endorsed by the UN Security Council, G7, and countries around the world. Well, Argentina became the first Latin American country to officially designate Hamas as a terrorist organization. The World Jewish Congress noted that this comes just a few days before the 30th anniversary of the Amia bombing, in which a suicide bomber drove a bomb-laden van into the Jewish community center in Buenos Aires, killing 85 people and injuring over 300. Argentina concluded that Iran and its proxy Hezbollah carried out that attack. President Javier Milei announced the Hamas designation on Friday, also noting its ties to Iran and noting Hamas's deadly attack on Israel on October the 7th. The American Jewish Committee said Argentina has set an example for all the nations of the Americas. The Iranian regime has been leading the world in funding terrorist proxies such as Hamas and Hezbollah for decades. We urge other countries to follow Argentina's lead and take similar action against Iranian proxies. The new Foreign Secretary of Great Britain was in Israel this week, his first visit to the country since taking office. David Lamy met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's President Isaac Herzog, who said first and foremost among the important topics we discussed was the supreme mission of returning the hostages home to their families. Herzog introduced the Foreign Secretary to the family of Tamir Adar, who was murdered on October the 7th, whose body is being held by Hamas in Gaza. The Foreign Secretary, who also met with other hostage families during his visit, made clear that his country will continue to work and demand for the release of all the hostages. who have now been held for 284 days. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Tuesday, July the 16th at 7 o'clock, Dr. Rachel Fish talks about Israel education post-October the 7th, while Dr. David Patterson and Dr. Cary Nelson examine the surge of anti-Israel sentiment on American campuses with ISGAP leaders Charles Asher Small and David Harris. At 8, Justin Pine sits with renowned Rabbi Avi Weiss for a full-ranging conversation on his childhood, Israel activism, and more. At 9, part 2 of Tal Keinan on L'chaim. At 10, it's the ILTVs Insider, which is also coming up next. Then at 10:30, an encore of the news. And that's the JBS News Update for Tuesday, July the 16th, 2024. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.